For the next and final stage of my project, I'm going to need a new image reference that I will be providing to you. I will of course need my drawing, and I want my full range of pencils. So my 6H, my 2H, my HB, my 2B, and my 6B. What I'm going to do now is, looking at my full image, I want it in view, so I'm going to place it here above my drawing. I want to double check and reflect on how well my parts that I drew and shaded match to my image reference. For our final stages, we're going to do some reflection and correction. I'm going to look and analyze my shapes, my forms, my values, and my textures. And this is now the time in which I want to go in and make any corrections and adjustments to my image before submitting my work. So as I reflect on what I have done and analyze my work, both for value, texture, and form, when I see an area that I may want to go in and make corrections to or add to, most likely it's going to be some small corrections in possible texture areas, deepening some value changes because we were trying to stay a little bit lighter. Because as I mentioned early on in the project, we can always go back and darken, but it's very difficult to lighten up. So as I'm analyzing these things and deciding where I may make corrections, I'm also going to decide which pencil I'm going to use. So anything I may make corrections on, like I'm looking here and I can see I could probably make this a little bit of a slightly darker light gray compared to what I already have. Up in here I can expand this lighter gray area from the brightness I have here and get a little bit more this slightly darker gray in there. I need to deepen up here above the eye to really bring out the role of the eyebrow ridge as it sits above the eye. And I can darken up a little bit of this gray over here in the nose area and add a few more of these little texture spots that indicate the very short hairs and markings on the nose of my subject. So as I'm looking at these things and deciding where I want to make corrections and additions and change things, I'm also deciding what pencil I'm going to use. So anything that's going to be a lighter gray, I'm going to try first with 6H and 2H. And if those are not enough to deepen it, then I'm going to go in with some HB to help bring out those slightly darker values. If it's something in a more mid-tone range to a darker mid-dark range, I should say, then I'll most likely go from HB to 2B, choosing HB first because again 2B softer, so it's going to lay on top. And if there is an area in which things look too fuzzy, like over here where I was placing my 6B and darkening up those values into a mid-dark range, I'm going to come in a little bit of a harder lead pencil to soften up and blend those values down into the paper more so I'm not getting that white space there. So these are things we have talked about before throughout the project, and now it's just my time to look at the image as a whole instead of strip by strip and to make these corrections. So that's what I'm going to be working on. So a little tip for those of us with an animal that has longer hair. Sometimes in our blocking off of the shapes and doing the negative space shading, and that means shading around lighter areas with our darker values to give the lighter areas a purposeful form or shape. What I will sometimes do is at the end of the project come in and apply some quick little hairlines. Now when I do this, it's not all over the place. It's in areas where I want to increase the look of the finer hair texture, or when I want to soften up the bluntness of those traced over shapes. So up in here in the ear, I'm just bringing in a little bit of a hairline, just a quick flick of my wrist, just to kind of break up the harshness of those hard lines that I drew when creating these values. And I'll do it in both directions, so I'm not doing it in every part, but it's just in areas where I want to kind of soften things. You can do it both with a lighter gray into an even lighter gray area, so kind of a medium gray into a light gray area, but you can also carefully do it with a darker pencil. So I can come in here and drag a couple of hair thin lines down from my darkest values, just to again soften up some of the bluntness of the edges. And it's just a really quick small stroke. Does this have to be done? No, but if you have an area that just looks a little bit too blocky, doesn't look as soft hair like as you would like it, that is a solution. And when I say a quick little movement, it's like that. Okay, just a quick little movement to drag some darker pigment over into some of the lighter pigment areas to help give it a little bit more of a hair-like texture. It's like down in here, I can do a couple quick little flicks like that to soften up this blocky edge and this blocky edge. I can also do it with any of my spots too. If I feel they just look too spotty and I need a few more little light hairlines, I could drag some darker, thinner hairlines out to also help with a texture like that. So it's not a lot of hair drawing. It is just a few on the edges here and there to just help soften up blockiness of anything that I've shaded in through this negative space shading. So when you see me making that quick motion with my pencil, that's all I'm doing. I'm just softening up some edges of some outlined areas. And again, as I said, this may not be for everyone. It may not work for everyone's drawing, but for those who have a longer texture in their drawing, in their subject, this could be an option to help soften up a little bit of the bluntness of drawing out those edges. So I'm just going to continue to make my adjustments, and we'll look at the final piece when I'm done. Okay, so I've gone through and I've added some areas where I needed to darken up a few grays. Again, it tends to be my areas where I had some lighter gray values that I was keeping to the light side because I knew I could easily go back with pencil and darken in values, but it's more difficult to lighten them once they're applied, especially if you have a really dark pencil down. I believe I am done. I like some of the changes I made, some of the textures I brought out a little bit further with some quick hairline movements, and I think my values match fairly close to the original, which was one of my goals, and I am calling it complete. So my last step is to, somewhere on my image, sign my name. If I'm going to go in a darker gray area, I may want to consider the border area to sign my name. And it's up to you where you sign it. You don't have to sign it down here in the lower right corner. You can sign your artwork almost anywhere where you feel you could easily hide it, because we don't want the signature to be the most noticeable thing about our artwork. We want the artwork itself to stand out. Now you can also initial it, so I think I'm just going to initial mine. I think I'm going to go over here. So I'm just going to use my 6B pencil, and I'm going to put in my initials. That's why it's not showing up. I wasn't using the right pencil. I'm going to put my initials right here along the back of my cat, and it's kind of hidden in the artwork, just a small little set of initials. But again, I could sign it anywhere on my image. If you want to really show, then consider the white border, but otherwise I'm declaring it finished. So now that it is finished, I'm going to take a photograph of it, and I'm going to submit that photograph to the assignment, and you're going to turn it in physically to Miss Barnett. So you're going to take this new copied version that I gave you and lay it over the top, and you're going to take your paper clip you were provided with earlier to keep your strips together, paper clip this onto here, and submit it to me also in person. So that concludes our project. I hope you're as happy with yours as I am with mine, and I will see you in our next project.